The DJI Neo has 9 automated flight modes, and so in this video I'm going to show you exactly what each of them does, when you should use each ones, and the best settings and tips for each flight mode. So mode number 1 is follow. This simply tracks the subject from behind as you're walking around, running, etc. This is great for general purpose tracking follow shots when you want to have a little camera automatically following behind you. And this is probably going to be one of the modes that you use the most on the Neo. Now all of these modes can be accessed by just pushing the little mode switch button on the drone, or by connecting your phone in the DJI Fly app and changing the modes there. And in the DJI Fly app you can also adjust settings for most of these modes. So for follow mode, the two settings that we can adjust are distance and height. First up, distance. This is how far the drone stays from you as it's following you. There's close, medium, and far. And for height, the settings are low, which is flying as low to the ground as it can without crashing, flat, which is following you from basically roughly head body height, and high, which follows you from a higher perspective. Now for follow mode, the best settings that I've found is far distance, because close and medium settings tend to cut off your legs and just show the top of your body, and at least cut off your feet most of the time. So I much prefer to have the drone follow from a bit further back and show the entire subject. And as far as height, which setting you choose just depends on the perspective you want. If you want the drone to be looking up at your subject, following it from roughly eye level, or from a higher perspective, I generally prefer the high setting because it gives you more of a drone-like perspective, which is probably what you want from a drone shot. And I put all of this information for each of the flight modes into a PDF checklist that I'm giving away for free, and the link to download it is in the description. Next up, our second automated flight mode is the Droney. This is the classic drone selfie where the drone flies backwards away from you with the camera pointed at you, and then once it is done with that, the drone will fly back and return to you. And with all of these automated flight modes, you just launch the drone from your hand, it goes out, flies, does its shot, and comes back, and then you can just put your hand under the drone, hold it there for a few seconds, and the drone will land into your hand. And the Droney flight mode is great for, well, drone selfies. That is basically what it does. You can also use it for anything where you want to have a similar movement of the drone, even if you aren't just standing there and waving at the drone. You can launch the drone, have it start doing that movement, and then go ahead and do something else that you're doing while the drone flies up and then flies back down towards you. Now for Droney, there are two different settings. First of all, there's max distance. This is how far away the drone will fly before it comes back. You can set this anywhere from 6 feet all the way up to 32 feet, or for my metric people, 2 meters all the way up to 10 meters. And there's also a height setting. You can set this to either flat or rise. In flat mode, the drone just flies backwards at the same altitude, whereas in rise mode, the drone flies both backwards and up and away. Now, as far as which settings I prefer, I much prefer to use the rise mode for a classic droney shot. In my opinion, it looks much better to have the drone flying up and backwards rather than just backwards, and it also gets the drone up and away from obstacles. But the flat mode could also work well for certain types of drone shots. And for distance in general, I'd set this to the furthest setting, 32 feet or 10 meters away, because it gets the drone further away from you by the end of the shot, shows more of the environment and the landscape, and just gives you a longer drone shot to work with when you're editing or posting to social media or whatever you're doing with the footage. The next flight mode is circle. In circle mode, the Neo will fly out to the distance that you set, and then it will orbit around you in a circle once and fly back so that you can catch it, all the while keeping the camera locked onto you. The orbit or circle is actually one of my favorite drone moves. It creates super great shot with a lot of dynamic parallax movement between the subject and the background. So this is one of my favorite modes on the DJI Neo, and one of the most versatile modes as well. One thing you do have to watch out for with circle mode though is obstacles, because the drone has absolutely no obstacle avoidance on the sides. So if there's anything in the way, it will run into it. And there's only one setting that you can set for circle mode, which is the radius, how far away the drone will fly before it flies around you in a circle. You can set this anywhere between 6 and 65 feet, or again for my metric people, 2 and 20 meters. If you set the radius to a further distance, it will make you smaller in the frame, but you will get a longer shot as the drone goes around. So it just kind of depends on what type of shot you want to get. In general, I would probably go with either the 19 or 32 foot option as the sweet spot. Again, you really need to watch out for obstacles as you're doing this because it's super easy for the drone to crash. Now actually with the Neo, it's generally not going to be catastrophic if the drone does crash, but it's just something to keep in mind, especially if the drone might crash somewhere where you'd have a hard time retrieving it, for example, into water. Another trick for orbit mode is that you can actually move around while it does the orbit shot. The Neo will keep the camera pointed at you and track you even if you move around while it is flying. So you can launch the drone in the middle and then walk a short distance while the drone orbits around you, and it will track you as it does that, and that can create a really cool shot. Our next mode is the rocket. In rocket mode, the Neo will fly straight up with the camera pointed straight down, and then it will descend back down so you can catch it. This will usually look best if there's some kind of a pattern in the shot, for example, some kind of interesting lines in a field or crossroads or a pier or just something interesting on the ground to look at. This can also look great if you lay down on the ground, look up at the drone, and have it fly up above you. Now there are two settings for rocket mode. First of all, the maximum height that it will fly up to, you can set this between 13 and 32 feet or 4 and 10 meters. And the second setting is spin. You can turn this either on or off. This will basically make the drone rotate as it rises and descends for a more interesting and dynamic shot. And my recommended settings for rocket mode are to get the drone to go as high as possible most of the time. So that will mean setting the height to 32 feet or 10 meters. This gives you more of a real drone shot up in the sky, and of course a longer shot to work with in editing. And I also really like to turn spin on to make the shot more dynamic and interesting. Next up, we have spotlight mode. In spotlight mode, the Neo will just hover in place after you launch it, and then it will just automatically track you around by turning the drone and tilting the gimbal wherever you move. In spotlight mode, the only setting that you can change is to switch between photo or video mode. This is the only flight mode that lets you take photos. If you set this to video mode, it will, as you would imagine, shoot a video, but if you set it to photo, it will snap a photo if you hold a pose for 3 seconds. Not something I would probably use a whole lot, but the option is there. All in all, spotlight isn't my favorite mode because the drone isn't actually moving, but it can be good for getting a shot of you walking past the drone and having the drone track you or something like that. Now, our last 3 modes all go into one single option that you can select with the mode switch on the drone, and to change between them, you have to go into the DJI Fly app and change which one of those is mapped to that last mode on the drone. So the first of these 3 modes is direction track. In direction track mode, you can have the drone track you from either the side, from the front, or from behind you, based on where you put the drone when you have it start following you. Honestly, I'm not a super huge fan of direction track. In theory, it is great, but honestly, it just crashes into stuff a lot because there are no obstacle avoidance sensors. So unless you're in an open area with no obstacles, I probably wouldn't recommend using direction track. Now there are 2 settings that you can change, distance and height. This is going to be basically the same as follow mode. For distance, you can choose close, medium, and far. For height, you can choose low, flat, and high. And so pretty much everything I said for follow mode goes here. Next up is Helix mode. In Helix mode, the Neo will spiral outwards and upwards around you in kind of a rising helix move. This is a really cool dynamic drone shot that can be a lot of fun to use. Now there's only one setting that you can change here, which is the maximum distance that it will fly away. You can set this between 13 and 65 feet. And for Helix mode, I'd say that the further the better. You'll get a longer shot, a more epic shot that shows a larger environment and more of the landscape that you're in. And one other nice thing about Helix mode compared to orbit mode is that it gets the drone up and further away from obstacles. So you can have the drone fly further away, let's say all the way out to 65 feet, even if you have obstacles that are closer to you than that. Next up is Boomerang mode. In Boomerang mode, the drone basically does kind of what it sounds like. It kind of boomerangs around. It makes this kind of elliptical loop. It pulls back and then swings around and then comes back to where it started. Honestly, I'm not super impressed with Boomerang mode. It can be nice, but I generally prefer the orbit or helix mode. Now there is again one setting, which is maximum distance, and you can set this somewhere between 13 and 65 feet, as with the other two modes. And our very final mode is manual control, and this is only available in the DJI Fly app. This lets you fly your Neo with little virtual joysticks on your phone. This can be a little bit hard to do because they're just virtual joysticks and you're not getting any tactile feedback into your fingers, but you do have maximum flexibility to get any kind of drone shot that you want in manual control mode. Another advantage of using manual control mode on the DJI Neo is that you don't have to have a particular subject or person in your shot that can be tracked by the drone like with all of the other modes. So to access this, you'll just flip over into manual control mode and it will bring up joysticks. Now to make it a lot easier, you can just click on the little brackets in the corner of the video feed to go into full screen mode, and this will make it much easier to fly with your phone in horizontal mode with more space for the virtual joysticks compared to if you're trying to do it in vertical mode. And to take off in manual mode, you'll just hold down on the takeoff button and the drone will take off and hover, and then you can fly it around, and to land you'll just fly it back again, stick your hand under it, and it will land. So there you have the automated flight modes on the DJI Neo. Make sure to download the free checklist with all of this information. Again, link to that is in the description, and you can click right here to watch another video on the DJI Neo. And if you want to learn how to get the most cinematic shots with any drone, make sure to watch my completely free drone filmmaking training, where I share my top 10 secrets to cinematic drone videos, covering everything from the best settings to use, how to get smooth cinematic movements, how to compose your shots, how to work with natural lighting, how to edit your videos, how to color grade them, and a whole bunch more. Again, it's completely free. Link is in the description, so go check that out. And as always, subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next one.